Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Markets to Watch from Smack the Markets for week commencing the 13th of September. So I'm back from a 2-week vacation and a 2-week break from the markets, taking a look through things at the beginning of this week. Looks like a number of markets, many sort of asset classes just really haven't sort of changed an awful lot at all over the past sort of 2-week period. Again, we've got very light news starting the beginning of this week, so not really helping to give an awful lot of direction to the markets. Having said that, I do think that there are some signs here of some changes starting to take place, particularly in the index markets. So let's take a look at a few markets here and some of the opportunities that we're looking at going into the beginning of this week. So if we take a look at these index markets, we'll start off with the Dow. We'll have a look at the S&Ps as well in a moment. We can see that they have had a bit of a decline over the past week here. There are some signs of weakness coming into these index markets, and I agree with a number of sort of commentators now and analysts sort of suggesting that things are starting to look a little bit weaker on the upward momentum and trajectory of the index markets. We can see that here on the Dow future, that whilst we're just still within the context of a long trend, we have started to see some decisive sort of weakening in the momentum on the Dow. So as the market's making new highs, as prices making new highs, we've got lower highs forming in the strength of momentum. And of course we know that if this is going to continue to move with strength to the long side, well, we need stronger momentum, and we're not seeing that at the moment. So at the moment we're seeing that the market is bouncing off the sort of 20 period moving average here. We're starting to see a bit of support coming in on the weekly chart. Let's just sort of drill down to the lower time frames to see how this price action looks. If we come down to the daily now, you can see that on the daily the market sort of bounced off a level in here around 34.50. well, it's around 34.47. An area where we've had previous lows before and previous highs. So we've got significant support and resistance around this area, and the market's starting to find a bit of a bounce. So not really surprising that we've seen some fairly decent sort of selling over the past number of sessions here. Now if we look at this just from a price action perspective, I wouldn't be at all surprised to expect to see a bounce in the market here, which is exactly what we're seeing. The question is how we're going to move on from here. Is this going to move on to make new highs? At this moment in time, I'm not even considering that. What I'm considering is we should be getting a bounce, possibly up to the next trading level, which is at 34.750. And then we've got another decision point here. If we don't have good enough reasons for this market to push on to 35, then we'd like to see this roll over again. And that's a nice place here where the market could find a lower high. If we come down to the 4-hour time frame, you can see the sort of picture here on the 4-hour. Short trend, lower highs, lower lows. We can see our structure levels. Again, if I just sort of zoom out of this, you can see that the market's sort of come into significant support after an overextended move, so we'd expect that rebound. And the market sort of coming back into what, 34.750, brings it back into that resistance area, and that's the area that we were looking at on the higher time frames. So the path where I'm expecting these markets to be moving from, at least at the moment here, particularly with no news at the beginning of the week, we could be seeing a bit of strength into the market up to 34.750, and then looking at how the market reacts around that sort of area there. Again, if you start to come down to the lower time frames, there could be some sort of opportunities here if the markets start to break above the pivot points here on the 15-minute chart, and then we've got this sort of window up here to the long side. Now again, if we come and have a look at the S&Ps, you can see that we've got a similar picture here on the S&Ps as well. So here on the weekly chart, after last week's sell-off, finding a bit of support. I think the S&P's looking a little bit more bullish compared to the Dow, but again, these markets do tend to be fairly correlated in the direction of their sort of movement. Again, you can see here on the daily chart that the S&Ps did come into support at 44.50, and the market sort of finding support in there at the moment. Come down to the 4-hour chart. Again, you can see that 44.50 where we've had support and resistance before, and we can see the same pattern here on the S&Ps that we saw on the Dow, which is a move back up into 44.80 where there is another decision point, also coinciding with the moving averages, and of course the 4-hour chart already confirmed into a short trend here. So again, I think the path of least resistance for these index markets is at least a move back up into these 4-hour decision point areas, and then we could be seeing either some weakness for the continuation of the trend to the short side, or we need a good reason here, good move to give this market some strength to move higher and break the trend. Now if we come over to take a look at the the precious metal markets, they're pretty unsurprising, to be perfectly honest with you. If we have a look at gold, nothing really significant here. I still remember 2 weeks ago when I left, the market was around 1.8. It's around 1.8 at the moment, or just under 1.8 at this moment in time. So gold looking sort of very sideways at this moment, although the path of least resistance does look to be to the weaker side. If we come over and have a look at silver, again, silver, Fergal mentioned silver in the morning prep this morning. Silver's, I think, one of the more interesting ones out of the pair. We've got a lower high formed here on the weekly chart, and you can see that silver is just sort of breaking through the low here around $24 and starting to look more bearish. Now the weekly chart is in a short trend. There are trading windows to the short side on silver down to 23 and then down to $22. If we bring that down to the 4-hour chart, again you can see here on the 4-hour we're broadly into a short trend, and we've got that trading window just to the short side here on silver. Now out of the metal markets, I think one of the more cleaner ones that could be of interest is platinum. So again, this is supporting these metal markets to the short side. If we have a look at this on the weekly chart, you can see that the market here is breaking through a consolidation that the market's been stuck in here for quite a few weeks now. So it's just taken out the lower end of this consolidation, and you can see that we've got a fairly decent sized trading window down to 900 here on the metal. So again, if we take a look at this on the lower time frames, the weekly of course already in the short trend, on the daily again we've got a short trend formed here. We've got the market breaking through the lows here of 955, and you can see we're just sort of sitting there at just underneath those levels at the moment. So again, these lower time frames, even coming down to the 4-hour chart, you can see that we've got short trends in place, and also sort of targets to the short side, as now the market's broken through this sort of zone here of support at sort of 960 to 950. Now I think here we get some sort of retracement, some sort of pullback, possibly into the sort of 955 area. That could be a nice area for positioning for further weakness on the platinum market. So quite liking platinum out of the metal markets to the short side. If we come over to the currency markets, now there's a lot of currency markets looking rather sort of choppy at this moment in time. I think some of the ones that I'm thinking are looking more interesting is the Great British Pound against the Swissy, and also Great British Pound against the Yen. Again, if we have a look at these slightly here across the board on the higher time frames, you've got Pound Yen. Again, if we have a look at this on the daily chart, the market's been contained within a range, for quite a tight range here for some time now, certainly over the past week. Seeing that the market has tried to push up above the a breakout here once, it's pulled back into the support area. Let me just zoom into this again. So 151, 152, clearly sort of finding support here on this market. I wouldn't be at all surprised if we start to see a bit of a push to the long side. We've got a trading window above price at the moment, and the yen is particularly weak. So whilst the Great British Pound is not particularly strong at the moment, it is strong against a very weak yen. And we've got the same story on the Swissy as well, and the Swissy actually being weaker than the yen today. So again, if we have a look at this on the higher time frames on the weekly, you can see that we've got whilst the market's broadly within a range, as indeed a lot of forex markets are, we've got a fairly decent move up here to 128, which is the top end of this range, which looks like where this market wants to test. Again, if we come down to the daily time frame, you can see that we're in a long trend here on the daily, and the market next trading window decision point is at 128 to the long side. Again, if we start to come down to the 8-hour chart, again, if I zoom out of this, you can see that the market has just sort of broken through a level here on the 8-hour chart. We've got the next sort of trading window that the market's just breaking into, pushing up to 128, and a fairly substantiated trend here long on the 8-hour chart. And the same story, of course, here on the 4-hour chart too. So fairly reasonable trend starting to develop. We've got sort of convergence to the long side, and we've got trend direction to the long side too. So keeping an eye on positioning and entry points here on Great British Pound, Swissy, Great British Pound, Yen to the long side. So there's a few markets there that we're keeping a close eye on going into the beginning of this week. I certainly hope it helps, and look forward to speaking to you next time. Bye for now.